Joining me now from Washington, D.C., President of Judicial Watch, Tom Fitton. Tom, I want to talk to you. I don't want to spend a lot of time on Julian Assange, but it fits into what we're talking about here, and that is the BARR investigation, and hopefully at some point the appointment of a special counsel to investigate this corruption at the highest levels during the Obama administration to try and penetrate a candidate for president of the United States. But Julian Assange fits in here because this helps obliterate one of the mainstream media's and the Democrat Party's narratives, and that is there was supposed to be some sort of unholy alliance between Julian Assange and Donald Trump and Team Trump, Roger Stone, and all these people. So why? I woke up this morning and I heard about the news of his arrest, and I'm thinking to myself, uh-oh, this really is trouble for the Democrats and the mainstream media because this doesn't fit in. Why would President Trump and his administration be going after Julian Assange if they're buddy-buddy in releasing this information to try and hurt Hillary Clinton during the 2016 campaign?
Well, Assange, you may recall, Graham, was a hero of the Republic when he was leaking material to the New York Times, classified material that damaged our national security. And then once he was tied to this DNC material, the Democratic establishment turned on him. And I think it's going to be a straightforward prosecution, and it's a reminder that the media, and just because you call yourself a member of the media doesn't mean that you're above the law. And certainly the laws against the dissemination and publication of classified material, there's no media exception for that. And with Assange, he's accused of conspiring with his source to compromise our national security by stealing passwords and obtaining passwords illegally.
Yep.
So he's hard to defend. And the idea that, again, Miss Pelosi's incomprehensible statement would suggest that Trump and others were protecting this scheme to undermine our elections, which, according to the Mueller operation, was WikiLeaks was a vehicle for doing so. Well, Mr. Trump's administration is going to be prosecuting this scheme.
Yep. And so the Assange-Trump alleged conspiracy disintegrates essentially as of today. It's just another narrative that goes away.
Well,
so let's talk about
there was never a conspiracy.
There wasn't, right?
Mueller's report confirms there was never a conspiracy.
Right, of course. But it's still being beaten in the mainstream media. So let's talk about the real.
That's true. That's true. We have to remind.
Let's talk about the real conspiracy, Tom. And that is between the Obama administration, Hillary Clinton, the DNC, and what I call the fourth branch of government. And it's difficult for the Democrats to wrap their head around what has transpired in the last 48 hours in Washington, D.C., and that is an attorney general actually using the S word, spying on the Trump campaign. And here's a clip that really sent them off into a tizzy. Roll tape.
Well, for the same reason we're worried about foreign influence in elections, we want to make sure that during an election, I think spying on a political campaign is a big deal. It's a big deal. There were a lot of rules put in place to make sure that there's an adequate basis before our law enforcement agencies get involved in political surveillance. I'm not suggesting that those rules were violated, but I think it's important to look at that. And I'm not talking about the FBI necessarily, but intelligence agencies more broadly.
So you're not suggesting, though, that spying occurred?
I think spying did occur. Yes, I think spying did occur.
Well, let me.
The question is whether it was adequately predicated, and I'm not suggesting it wasn't adequately predicated, but I'd need to explore that.
The stunned look on Senator Jeanne Shaheen's face when he said, the Attorney General said, yes, spying took place. We know spying took place. We have reams of evidence. You at Judicial Watch have reams of evidence.
I don't know what's surprising about his comment. And, the reaction and the overreaction to his comment isn't, in my view, so much that the acknowledgement that spying took place. It's the understanding that there's going to be an investigation as to why it took place. And this is why, and the Democrats, their party, literally, the Democratic National Committee, was involved in what I think was a criminal conspiracy to misuse the powers of government to target a political opponent of their candidate, Hillary Clinton. So people like Hillary Clinton, the Democratic National Committee, their lawyers, their party apparatus in Congress that was a vehicle for also disseminating this false evidence, knowingly false evidence, accusing the president of treason, is going to be subject to investigation. And I hope Mr. Barr goes to town in terms of a serious investigation. I don't want a special counsel. I want a prosecution of the individuals we already know committed misconduct, people like Peter Strzok. Andrew McCabe, he was referred to the Justice Department a year ago for lying. Still nothing's been done. We've got to get the Justice Department working again to the sort of minimal standards of the rule of law. And my gosh, you can see the Democrat reaction tells you that they have a lot to hide.
The domestic spying should be a big deal. It is a big deal, but it should be a big deal to all Americans because we have this thing, Tom, called the Bill of Rights. And one of the names you just mentioned, Strzok, Lisa Page, I want to get to him in just a second. Lisa Page, she made it pretty clear that these counterintelligence investigations were, I guess, as common as a Lincoln penny. James Comey, he said that the counterintelligence against the Trump campaign, Carter Page in particular, I guess, was launched based on zero evidence. And then you have Peter Strzok, as you mentioned, who opened this investigation. So we need to know how and why this counterintelligence investigation was launched initially, who was behind it. These are the most important things, and they're very valuable to all Americans because we have this thing called the rule of law, and we can't allow the rule of law to be trampled upon no matter what party you're affiliated with.
And the Attorney General has an obligation to protect the presidency from this assault. Recall, the Mueller operation also benefited from this illicit spying. One of the FISA applications or renewals was signed after Mueller was appointed. So there are questions for how Mueller operated as well. And, you would have, the left would have you believe the Attorney General has to lie supine in the face of Justice Department and FBI misconduct targeting the president because he was appointed by the president. Right. In fact, the Attorney General's obligation is to uphold the Constitution and protect our republic from the assault that it's been undergoing since the Obama administration, because there are people in the deep state and both partisans and deep state type Republicans who hate President Trump and were willing to break any rule and every rule in the book, including our Constitution, to try to overthrow him. And this coup has got to be exposed.
One more thing before I let you go, Tom. Congressman Nunes, with these referrals to the Department of Justice, 8 of them, 8 individuals. A lot of them have to do with abuse of the FISA court system. I think this is very important. This is right up your alley. The FISA court system, I don't even know if it should exist anymore in its current form. We need to review that. This is the domain of Congress. They need to bring this up and figure out how the FISA court was abused, why these judges, these FISA court judges, wherever they are and whoever they are, why they're not holding a Peter Strzok and the FBI accountable, why they're not sanctioning these people. There needs to be some accountability both in the 4th branch of government and in the 3rd branch of government in these FISA courts. But also these referrals have to do with leaks. And this is even more fascinating to me because it involves the mainstream media. And there are, Nunes says, I believe 2 or 3 reporters in particular that are repeat offenders of disseminating information that is illegal to be disseminated.
Right, and in the least, if they're not subject to prosecution, they're witnesses to the crime. You've got major media who know who the crooks are.
Right.
Who were in the deep state leaking this classified information. The FISA courts, it's a scandal for them as well. At Judicial Watch, it took us months of litigation back and forth with the courts and the Justice Department before they finally admitted to us. They held not one hearing on these extraordinary and unprecedented FISA warrants targeting a candidate for the president and then the president of the United States. They didn't even bother holding the hearings. So do you think they're going to bring in these people and examine their own processes? No way, Jose. You have to have independent, either a congressional investigation, it's assuming you get something competent, or the president should just say, look, these FISA courts are a waste. If I have warrants, you're just going to have to trust me to conduct my spying appropriately because these courts are a joke.
And meantime, where is this U.S. Attorney Huber out there in Utah land? And he's supposedly investigating elements of this, not all of this, but elements of this. This is why I believe that we need to have a special counsel. And then we can remove Mr. Barr from this equation and get to the heart of the matter and figure out who thrust upon the American people the greatest scandal in modern political history. Tom, thanks.